Today's documentary, Aristotle. The genius who was wrong. In the ancient world of ideas, one mind cast a shadow so long it would darken 2,000 years of human thought. His name was Aristotle. He built the very architecture of reason, forged the vocabulary of philosophy, and mapped the boundaries of knowledge itself. Yet, woven into this brilliant tapestry were threads of profound error, disturbing prejudice, and bizarre conviction. Ideas that would justify slavery, subjugate women, and misguide science for centuries. This is the story of the genius who was also wrong about almost everything. The scene is Athens, in the golden haze of the 4th century BCE. The city hums with intellectual fervor, a marketplace of ideas where sophists debate in the agora and students gather in colonnaded schools. Into this world walks a young man from Stagira, a northern outpost of the Greek world. He is not Athenian by birth, but he will become Athens' most formidable thinker. At 17, Aristotle enters Plato's academy, a place of shadow and light, of ideal forms and dialectical sparring. For 20 years, he is Plato's student, absorbing and then quietly dismantling his teacher's world of perfect, invisible forms. Aristotle's mind is different, grounded, empirical, obsessive about the tangible world. When Plato dies in 347 BCE, Aristotle leaves Athens, embarking on years of travel, study, and biological observation along the coasts of Asia Minor and the islands of the Aegean Delta. He dissects squid, catalogues marine life, and collects specimens with the meticulousness of a forensic investigator. This is the foundation of his genius, an insatiable hunger to know the wow of things, to crack the code of the natural world through relentless observation. In 335 BCE, Aristotle returns to Athens, not to the academy, but to found his own school, the Lyceum. It is here, walking the shaded pathways of its garden-like grounds with his students, that he constructs his monumental system of thought. He invents formal logic, creating the syllogism, a tool of reasoning so powerful it would remain unchallenged until the 19th century. His scope is staggering, encompassing everything from the physics of motion in Ein physics to the nature of tragedy in the Yichi poetics. He creates the very categories of knowledge: physics, metaphysics, ethics, politics, rhetoric, biology. For his students, like Theophrastus, who would succeed him, he is the master of all that can be known, the man who had sorted the chaos of existence into orderly, comprehensible drawers. But beneath this soaring edifice of intellect lay darker, stranger foundations. Aristotle's method was built on observation, yet his observations were often shockingly limited by the prejudices of his time and culture. He looked at the world through the lens of a privileged Athenian male, and what he saw became for him natural law. In his I Politics, Mukawai, he makes a chillingly calm argument. Some men, he writes, are slaves by nature. He declares with absolute certainty that the slave is a living tool. This was not merely a description of the pervasive practice of slavery in the ancient world. It was a philosophical defense, an attempt to root human bondage in the very structure of the cosmos. His gaze turned inward to the human body, and saw another hierarchy. In Jean, the generation of animals, he delivers one of his most infamous pronouncements. The female, he states, is a deformed male. This was not a casual insult, but a core biological principle in his system, rendering women biologically inferior, cooler, and less complete. Inside the skull, Aristotle located another critical mistake. In eye parts of animals, he examined the brain and found it cold and bloodless. He concluded it could not be the seat of sensation or thought. That honor, he argued, belonged to the heart, which was warm and active. The brain, he wrote, is an organ of no great importance. His ethical framework, so celebrated for its nuance, contained terrifying cracks. In the I Politics Cid, discussing the ideal city-state, Aristotle coolly addresses the issue of deformed infants. He writes that, for the good of the community, there should be a law that no deformed child shall be reared. In his relentless drive to classify the natural world, Aristotle's methods sometimes spiraled into the bizarre. He was fascinated by the mysterious European eel, which no one in antiquity had ever seen mate or spawn. Unable to find its eggs or offspring, Aristotle proposed a theory that would persist until the 19th century. Eels, he declared, generate spontaneously from the mud of riverbeds. These were not minor footnotes. They were central pillars of a worldview that was swallowed whole by later ages. When Aristotle died in 322 BCE, in Chalcis, fleeing anti-Macedonian sentiment in Athens, his personal library and unpublished treatises were left in disarray. For centuries, his dense, technical core of his system, the very texts containing both his deepest insights and his gravest errors, was lost to the Western world. They survived in the East, in the libraries of Alexandria, and in the scholarly traditions of the Byzantine Empire. Then, in a twist of historical fate, these texts were rediscovered by the medieval Islamic world. Scholars like Al-Kindi, Avicenna, and Averroes in Baghdad and Cordoba pored over them, wrote extensive commentaries, and wrestled with their implications for Islamic theology and science. In the 12th and 13th centuries, these Arabic translations and commentaries, along with the original Greek texts, flooded into Western Europe through centers of translation like Toledo in Spain. It was a cultural earthquake. Christendom was presented with a complete, rational, and breathtakingly detailed system for understanding God's creation, authored by a pagan philosopher. The initial reaction was panic and prohibition. In 1210, the Council of Sens forbade the teaching of Aristotle's natural philosophy at the University of Paris. But the dam broke. By the mid-13th century, figures like Albertus Magnus and his pupil, Thomas Aquinas, undertook a monumental project to baptize Aristotle, to reconcile his pagan reason with Christian revelation. The result was that Aristotle was no longer just a philosopher. He became the philosopher. His word became near sacred, the bedrock of the medieval university curriculum. To question Aristotle was not just to question science. It was to flirt with heresy. This canonization of error had devastating consequences. For centuries, physicians citing Aristotle's authority placed the seat of the soul in the heart, not the brain. His cosmology of a geocentric universe, with Earth immobile at the center of nested crystalline spheres, was woven into church doctrine, becoming a theological and scientific prison. When Galileo Galilei pointed his telescope at Jupiter in 1610 and saw moons orbiting another world, he wasn't just challenging an astronomical model. He was striking at the heart of an Aristotelian Ptolemaic system that had been fused with faith. The Inquisition's condemnation of Galileo in 1633 was, in essence, the defense of Aristotle's wrongness, institutionalized and armed with the power of the state. The story of Aristotle's errors is, therefore, also a story about the perils of authority. His brilliance was so overwhelming, his system so comprehensive, that it created a climate of intellectual deference that stunted inquiry. It took a slow, painful accumulation of counter-evidence and a new spirit of radical doubt to break his spell. Yet, even as his scientific edifice crumbled, his philosophical framework proved more durable. His logic, his ethics, his poetics, and his methods of categorization continued to shape thought. We are left with a paradox as immense as the man himself. Aristotle, the great advocate of empirical observation, was often a poor observer. The champion of logic could reason his way to appalling conclusions from flawed premises. He gifted us the tools to uncover truth, yet his own truths were riddled with falsehoods that hardened into dogma. His legacy is a double-edged sword, one edge sharpened to a razor's point of reason, the other blunt and cruel with prejudice. He teaches us not just how to think, but also a terrifying lesson: that brilliance is no shield against error, and that the most dangerous ideas are those delivered by a genius and left unchallenged for 1,000 years. In the end, Aristotle's greatest lesson may be a cautionary one. It is the reminder that no system of thought, no matter how elegant or comprehensive, should ever be closed to question. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you fascinating documentaries on history, science, civilizations, mysteries, and the untold stories that shaped our world. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss a new release. Until next time.